Well, hello, peeps. It's the Hillbilly Halfwit. Oh, what a lovely morning again. God, cracking day. Look at it. Look at it in this beautiful country. Good God. Anyway, I thought I'd just do an update on the total seats for reform. And sorry about my eyes, but I got hay fever. I'm like a myxomatosis rabbit. Absolutely terrible. Anyway, it seems like reform have got nearly 700. It's 670 seats, I think, not 800. So still brilliantly. They've got control of 10 councils. Fantastic. Fantastic. And the big bombshell was dropped last night by Farage. He says that every council, so they've got 10 councils they're in charge of. They're going to drop all the DEI things, so the people pushing for all this trans nonsense and the climate nonsense, he's going to sack them all. Absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to see how this goes. I cannot wait, because there's going to be hells of rows and strikes and stuff like that. But that's what you need, don't you? The public can see how much money's been wasted on this bullshit. So also, I think Kent, they're in charge of Kent now, I think. So Reform are in charge of Kent Council. And see, that's where all the migrants are coming over. So they can, if you're in charge of the council, you'll be able to see who's been working with the authorities, who's been pushing all this stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out of there showing that the British government and the civil service have actually been encouraging this. Because it wouldn't surprise me one bit that some of these NGOs and that are communicating with the RNLI to bring these people over in France. That's what I think's going on purpose. But anyway, so also lots of this asylum seeker accommodation that's happening in these councils, because the councils have got to agree to it all. So there's going to be 10 councils in the UK that are going to say we're not taking any more of your people in the hotels and things like that, and they're going to get all the inside information. So I think it's fantastic. I can't wait to see what happens. There's going to be huge rows, obviously. The more rows, the better. More rows, the better in the councils. And this active travel, if they can just get the freedom of information, get how much money has been spent on these bent companies getting all these things and Sustrands and things like that. I'd love to see that coming out. But there is some bad stuff, of course. Now, this is something I heard on the grapevine, that Starmer and his government have already signed a deal with the EU. Now, this is what I've heard, so I'm pretty sure it's right. They've signed a new fishing deal that gives France and other countries some of our fishing waters, and then we take students up to a certain age in the UK as freedom of movement and a lot of something. Apparently, they've been keeping it out of sight and not letting it come out till after these elections. So, bastards, aren't they? They are doing their best to overturn a democratic vote, but the only way to do it is to get them out next time. That's the only way. Now, I've said since the start, some people don't believe with me, but I've said since the start, since that vote came in, where the silent majority voted for Brexit, if you agree with it or not, the establishment went bonkers and decided anybody was going to push anything to make the UK look good, they were going to destroy it and try and reverse it all. And this is the culmination of that. They've put in that patsy, Starmer. He's their man. He's their civil service man. And they're going to keep him in there as long as possible. It doesn't matter what the people find out about him. He's their man. And even that woman, Sue Gray, who was the second in command of the civil service, he's turned his back on her and she's out. She's in the House of Lords. They're ruthless. They're absolutely ruthless. So I can see that coming next week, because they'll try to change the narrative off Farage, making him look like a bunch of wankers. But you can easily see how a country gets taken over by leaders that, well, not leaders, I think it's the civil service are running our country at the moment. They've put their own man in there. That's what's going on. That's what I personally think is going on. But there we are. What can you do about it? Is the only way to do it is at the ballot box? What else? So I tell you what I did listen to the other night. That part 2 of what's his name? Paul Thorpe the other night. Yeah, he had his mate Danny on. I don't know him. I don't watch him a huge lot. I've only watched him a few times. I don't really follow him. I watch the odd video of theirs. And I was talking about the video the other day where he changed his mind and came out of it, which I think is a good thing. Because after listening to that second part, his friend has obviously been really, really lent on by the MI5. And I mean, they must have threatened him big time. By the sound of it, he was absolutely shitting it. And you can see why. They're ruthless. They're absolutely ruthless. And Paul Thorpe himself, like I said, I don't know the guy. I've never met the guy. I probably have only seen about 5 or 6 of his videos. But they've got themselves into a situation where they're in over their head and they're dealing with people who are just ruthless. Now, he said something about Tommy Robinson, and I think he was spot on. I hope somebody says this to the guy, because I think he was spot on with what he said. He was talking about how he's a very patriotic guy himself, Paul. As you know, I think he's genuinely listening to me the other night. I think, yeah, you have definitely changed, and I'm glad you have. He was thinking that Tommy has turned himself into a kamikaze pilot. And I think he's right, because he's doing something that's going to get him, it's going to destroy his life if he ain't careful. You know, we all want our country back, but if you're going to put yourself in a position where you end up in prison for most of your life, you ain't doing any good. And you might think yourself as a hero, and you might be to others. But sometimes you've got to use your head and think about it, your family and everything. And like I say, personally, I think the best thing you can do is to try and get behind a party where you can get something done, like this election has shown. And the trouble is with a lot of these marches and things is that, I've said this on past videos, lots of the security services get involved, and they have people in there at the top of the tree sometimes causing trouble for everybody else, and they don't know what they are. And like I said, the steak knife in the IRA, he was actually killing people, killing British soldiers, and he was working for the British government. You know, they want to start stuff. And during the 70s, I remember programs, even panorama programs following, I'm not sure, was that MI5 or MI6 now? But there was right-wing bombings and things like that happening in London. Was it a bombing? I can't remember now. But I remember watching the program, and the security services were on the roofs watching it all happen. And lots of it is planned to create a reaction. And I think Paul Thorpe was right saying about Tom. He's be careful you don't turn yourself into a kamikaze pilot. And I think that's what's happened. He's got so, what's called with it all, he's ending up going to destroy his life. And it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. Now, however much we hate what's going on in our country, you've got to try to do it within the law. They'll have you. Simple as that. You know, I have a lot of shit myself now for doing my videos. You know, people have a go at me every now and then for things I say, and I have a lot of censorship, but nothing on the extreme level that they're having there. You know, they've been threatened with being in prison for the rest of their lives and things, aren't they? So anyway, I saw that the other night, and I thought he was right. He actually said some of his own side are attacking him for pulling out of doing these marches and things. And I can totally understand. It's your own life, your own family. The one guy had got his friend. They'd basically frightened him so much he'd had a bit of an episode, a mental episode, and he was in hospital. So this is what these security services can do. They're not right. They are ruthless, absolutely ruthless. So they're just normal people at the end of the day. They're normal people who thought we can do something by getting the big march. But I realised when the Iraq War started that marching wouldn't do anything, because there was a march in the Iraq War. There's marches for about a month there with millions of people in, and nothing changed. I realised then marches don't do anything. So there's a positive and a few negatives. So there we are. If you don't mind commenting down below and rating and subscribing, always like to hear your thoughts. All the best.